Hello everyone, my name is Ferne Hebig and I'm one of the co-creators of Basic Dungeoneering, along with my sister Christine Schmidt. Basic Dungeoneering is a visually exciting, hands-on, pick-up-and-play, entry-level adventure that you can enjoy with friends and family in a 2-hour sitting. When it comes to role-playing games, we have done all the hard work for you. This is a gateway role-playing game geared for ages 12 and up, although players as young as 8 or 10 can play with some adult assistance. It is meant for 1 to 5 players, including 1 player acting as a game master. I'm here to show you an overview of how to set up and play Basic Dungeoneering. The adventurer's quest in this level 1 adventure is to take your master's artifact into the dungeon in the cursed ruins of Thailand Fae and place it in the magical wellspring to renew its enchantments. Your master warns you not to spend the night or risk the ruins rearranging themselves around you after sundown, possibly trapping you within inside. It's a hazardous mission into an area of unstable wild magic, which attracts all manner of creatures. You and your fellow adventurers will have to battle and outwit multiple foes if you hope to survive to complete your mission. Victory, death, or retreat are your only options. To start the game, players will review the quick play setup and rules provided. This provides a brief summary of rules to help you get playing quickly. The reference guide contains additional rules and information. The first step is to choose a game master, or GM for short, from among the players present. Because we've provided an easy-to-use adventure guide for the game master, and this is an entry-level game, no experience is needed. Even players new to role-playing games can try their hand at being a game master. The game master will need to grab the adventure guide, collect all of the monster cards, all of the small hex tiles for things like monsters and doorways, the dungeon map tiles, and the item cards, and put these all in their playing area. Game masters will also want to grab a pen and paper to make notes that might be needed during the game. The game master will now start reading through the adventure guide, which outlines the mission and gives an overview of what their role and objective is. The adventure guide is set out with an easy-to-follow layout for new game masters. More experienced GMs can feel free to ad-lib when it comes to the suggested scripts and make up their own. There is a green icon in the guide to tell you what you should read aloud to the players, and a red icon indicating which sections are especially important that you keep secret and are for the GM's eyes only. Part of the GM's role is to lay out the dungeon map tiles, revealing a dungeon as the players explore. More experienced GMs may feel free to ignore the suggested tile placement in the guide and create the dungeon as they see fit. Once the players have selected a GM, they can now move on to step 2 of the quick play setup. While they do this, the game master will take the time to check out their monster cards and prepare to set the scene for the game to guide the players through their first exploring and combat turns. The players will set out all the remaining components in the play area. These include the character sheets, the dice, the dry erase markers, the gear cards, the reference guide, and the spell cards. Once players have laid out the components on the table for easy access, they may now each select a character to play. There are 6 characters to choose from: a tiefling cleric, a high elf fighter, a human barbarian, a gnome rogue, a halfling ranger, and a half-orc wizard. You may notice some characters are not exactly traditional, but we figured, hey, let's have fun with it. Why can't we have a half-orc wizard if we want to? Players will select one of these characters to play, as well as a player avatar that will represent their character as they move through the dungeon. Players are welcome to use their own level 1 characters they might have already created with another RPG or using a character generator. This game is pretty gosh darn compatible with other role-playing games. The character sheet includes important information about your character, and we won't go into all of the details here, but it does contain things such as your species, so whether you're human or gnome or half-orc, your name, your type, fighter, cleric, wizard, your player stats and abilities, your weapons and armor, and your starting gear. If the player is capable of using magic, it will also contain the spells that you know. The back of your character sheet also contains details on your character's personality, abilities, and other details that newer players may not be familiar with. We have done all the hard work for you when it comes to character creation. Players who are new to role-playing games or aren't as comfortable with improv will find this information helpful in getting them into character. One of the things we understand is that for players just starting out in an RPG, the different types of dice can be confusing and hard to remember. What we've done is color code the dice, and then use color-coded dice icons as images in many of the game's components, including on the player mat, in the adventure guide, on the character sheets, and generally anywhere where a specific die is referred to in the game. To get yourselves into the role-playing portion of this role-playing game, introduce yourself as your character to the rest of the group. You may want to change your behavior or change the way you talk to match your character. Again, players not really comfortable with improv or roleplay yet can simply read right from their character sheet. Once players have selected and read about their character, they will move on to step 4 of setup. As the Game Master prepares to create the dungeon and initiate the first turn, the rest of the players will now select the cards they will need based on their character cards, including spell cards, gear, and their player mats. The player mat is where you will track your hit points and other stats as they change in the game using a dry erase marker. You will need to fill out the player mat according to the instructions in the reference guide. It also contains some information for quick reference, such as the actions you can take on a turn, a scale of hexes, and a dice reference. When it comes to an RPG, one of the most important things for a Game Master to do is to set the scene. The Game Master is not just the person in control of the creatures. They're part referee, part storyteller or narrator, and also part actor. The Adventure Guide is the Game Master's most valuable resource, offering a couple of opening scripts to be read aloud to the players to help set the scene. To help players focus on their objective, the general mission parameters are also on the front page of the Quick Play Rules and Setup Guide. When you're all set up and ready to play, the GM will indicate to the players to place your avatars in the dungeon entrance, and then the GM will read the script to start setting the scene. There are 2 types of turns in basic Dungeoneering: exploring turns and combat turns. Players begin the game with exploring turns as they approach the entrance to the cursed dungeon. When exploring, you can do things like search for secret doors and traps, listen at doors and corridors, check doors to see if they're open, stuck, or locked, and take an appropriate action, search for treasure, talk to characters and creatures and look for clues, or take a rest to heal from combat. Something else new players often wonder is how to decide who goes first when you are exploring. The question of who goes first in a role-playing game is called initiative, and in an exploring turn, players can simply decide amongst themselves who might go first. Players don't have to act in any particular order and can generally move as many spaces as they like within reason on an exploring turn. An exploring turn lasts until something occurs requiring players to switch to a combat turn. Let's see an example. Players see a door blocking their path. They ask the GM, "Is the door locked?" The GM replies, "It is." Maybe the cleric asks the GM, "Is there any kind of trap on the door?" And the GM asks to roll for perception. Character rolls their perception and adds the number to their roll. The cleric rolls, and they point to their character sheet. They have a +2 for perception, so that means they rolled a 9. The GM announces that Sure is ready to have an observant cleric around. You look, and you don't detect any traps on the door. The barbarian takes that as their clue, deciding they're going to kick the door down then. The GM declares the door is old and brittle and gives way under the brawny boot of the barbarian, revealing a dark chamber on the other side. So the players have just gone through their first exploring turn. They don't know this yet, but they're about to enter their first combat turn. Once you know you're about to enter combat, it might be handy to know who is supposed to go first. You, or the creatures, and in what order. The GM will ask each player and creature to roll a 12-sided die known as a D12, the yellow dice. They roll this for initiative and add their initiative modifiers, which are listed on the card, to get their total initiative score. The character or creature with the highest initiative score goes first, and then the next, and so on. Each player will get a turn in combat. Once everyone has had a turn, players continue taking turns until victory, defeat, or retreat. In this circumstance, because the players surprise the enemy, they receive a surprise attack turn. That means the players get a turn to attack, and then the real combat begins in the order that the initiative scores indicate. So what can you do on a combat turn? There are up to 4 possible things you can do on a combat turn. You can take a move, an action, plus a bonus action and a reaction. There are all sorts of types of movement and rules, but here are some important things to note about moving your character. You don't have to move. You can only move as far as the speed icon on your character indicates. On your combat turn, you can also do actions. You don't have to take an action. The most common action in combat is the attack action. A special ability, a class feature, or a spell you may know may allow you to take a bonus action. A special ability, class feature, or spell may also allow you to react to a triggering event. For example, somebody might attack the party's wizard, triggering their shield spell. The reference guide contains details on different types of attacks, such as ranged, melee, spells, and different types of actions like hiding, helping, dodging, or using an object like a potion. So in combat, one of the first things you're going to want to decide is, do you need to move? You will also need to announce what or who is your target and how you're going to attack or what you're going to attack with. Like this barbarian attacking this kobold with their great axe. Now, do you have any modifiers or abilities that will add a bonus to your attack roll? Now's the time to activate those. The GM will check the barbarian's attack total against the kobold's armor class on the creature's card. If the total attack rolled meets or exceeds your foe's armor class, you hit and can roll for damage. That's already enough, with a kobold only having 5, to put him down to 0. The kobold's tile would then be removed from the dungeon because he is defeated. Not all attacks will result in damage. For example, if you're the rogue, and you've decided to take a ranged attack action of throwing a dagger at the enemy and it misses, you can then choose to move to where your knife landed, use a bonus action to pick your knife up, and then be ready to attack with it again on the next turn. If you've been hit when it's the creature's turn to attack, you may need to adjust your current HP on your playmat to reduce it by the damage amount. Combat can end in 3 ways. When the entire group of players is killed or retreats, when the entire group of creatures is killed or retreats, or when a bargain or deal is struck, such as bribing an enemy kobold with some gems, reducing combat to a less deadly encounter. Often players can take this opportunity to attempt to gain information from an enemy. Once combat is over, don't forget to search the area for useful items or treasure. Finding handy treasure will be essential to your mission's success. The game will continue on with exploring and combat turns until the players find the magical wellspring and are able to enchant the master's artifact. Normally, once the mission is complete, the GM will cause an exit to magically appear for the players to safely leave the dungeon. As players gain more experience, they may want to try battling different or more difficult combinations of creatures. The wonderful thing about this game is that it opens up a whole world of possibilities, including expansion packs with new adventures, new characters of different levels, new monsters and creatures, new map tiles for storylines about things like haunted forests or treacherous mountain passes teeming with all manner of dangerous and nefarious creatures and foes and wondrous treasures. So there you have it, a general overview of the setup and play of our game, Basic Dungeoneering. So on behalf of my co-creator and sister, Christine Schmidt, I'm Ferne Hebig, and now I think there's only really one thing left to say. Go ahead, play games.